nice. Thank you very much. Thank you, sir. Okay, now for the main event. I'm going to share a quick clip with you before I introduce our guest speaker this evening. It's been a long day.
So many kind of coping mechanisms in place in my life for my own mental health, and then the pandemic they were gone, and I'm such an extrovert as well, so my experience was all of my coping mechanisms that made me feel good were gone. I got my energy from other people, and all of a sudden I didn't have those other people. The only way I can describe it is it was like a slow unravelling of my own mental health. It took the time and I took the space I was being offered, and I got the help I needed, and that has ended up in a neurodiverse diagnosis. So I've been diagnosed with ADHD in November, which was completely undetected my whole life. So I've now got a framework to start to go, why did I find all of these things so difficult? Why have I been navigating these issues my whole life? What is going to help me from a neurodiverse perspective rather than just doing the things that help everyone else? So and I feel like I've come back from that with a much more solid relationship with Sophie, a much more solid relationship with the team, a much better understanding of myself, and a much better framework in my life through which to manage my own mental health. So and that would never have happened if I hadn't just stopped.
Amazing. So, our guest this month has worked in digital marketing and events for their entire career, with experience in third sector, fast-paced startups and global businesses. In 2017, they co-founded The Joyful, a brand development and digital marketing agency for businesses that want to make an impact, challenge the status quo, launch positive and purposeful marketing campaigns, and build communities for their customers. They are passionate about helping purpose-driven brands grow and supporting impact-driven entrepreneurs, as well as promoting a culture of flexibility, well-being and conscious working in the digital sector. They are also an author of children's book series for ages 4 to 8, which promotes diversity, understanding and social inclusion. They are a non-executive director for Wide Sussex, a non-for-profit organisation supporting the digital media and technology sectors across Sussex. Now, quite possibly the reason that we've sold out today, I'm sure, and delighted to welcome the wonderful Alice Reeves.
Thank you. I got a bit emotional watching that.
It was great to see. Look, we obviously met. We've done obviously recorded the podcast together, which is an amazing conversation, just so inspiring for me. So I was delighted to obviously have you here and be able to chat to everyone today. And we're going to jump straight. Obviously, as we mentioned there, and I know we talked a little bit on the podcast about it, but about the books,
Yes.
Which I've actually bought for our children, which are amazing. And tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so we actually created those books back in 2014, 2015, so quite a long time ago now, 7 years. They're for children ages 4 to 8, and they actually came about because at the time I was dating an author. So I knew quite a lot about the world of books, and we were just having a conversation one night over a glass of wine, and I'm part of the LGBT community, and so I've got a lot of friends who are transgender, and around that time, 2014, 2015, the conversation around trans people and trans rights was kind of just really starting to build, and I could see so many of my friends and people I cared about struggling, and I just got really angry one night, and I turned around to my partner at the time, and I was like, oh God, I was like, gender is so fucking simple, I could explain it to a 5-year-old. And he said, go on then. And I did. And he turned around to me and he went, that's a children's book. And so I sort of sketched out the idea for a children's book explaining gender identity, not necessarily from the point of view of a transgender person, because I identify as gender fluid, but not trans, but more to educate other children around the issue, and we sought consultancy from our friends, members of the trans community, spokespeople, people involved in Trans Pride Brighton, to shape what that story looked like. And as well as that, we've got books around just fitting in, around mental health, around disability, and we self-published those because we invested our own money in, myself and my amazing illustrator, Phoebe Kirk, to get those self-published. So we self-published for about 2 years, and then we got picked up by a publisher called Jessica Kingsley, who specialised in books around neurodiversity, gender and mental health. And we were published by them for 5 years, and we've just had the rights reverted back to us, so we're going to self-publish again. And what's really exciting is we are also, this is the first time I've said this in public, we are in early stage talks with a theatre to turn the books into a stage adaptation, which is so exciting.
That is amazing. I mean, look, from first-hand experience, obviously I've got twins, and Luca is very gender fluid, and he has been since they're 7 now, and he has been since he was 2, and obviously we spoke about it and just really touched. He's obsessed by foxes as well, and one of the books is about what a fox wanted to be. Vincent the Vixen. And it was amazing. When I was just blown away, and we got the book and I've read it to it, it just is incredible, and it really does tackle that problem. And I can't, from a personal point of view, thank you, it's amazing. So, look, we obviously looked again on the podcast episode there, and we've talked a little bit offline about obviously your recent ADHD diagnosis. Just can you tell us a little bit more about that, and obviously sort of the impact that's had on you?
Yeah, so like I alluded to in the clip, my ADHD went undetected for a lot of my life, and that is so common in women. I'm going to share some stats, but I haven't verified them, they're just from things I've read online. But from what I've read online, men are around 4 times more likely to be diagnosed with ADHD than women, because they display the kind of classic symptoms you'd expect of ADHD. Like as kids, they're like bouncing off the walls and they've got so much energy. Whereas with girls, it tends to be more directed inwards, will show more inattentive symptoms like losing interest, daydreaming, having difficulty concentrating. And the impact of that over my life was that I had symptoms of depression and anxiety, which were then diagnosed as, I was diagnosed at 15 with what was then manic depression, but it's now bipolar disorder, and I don't have it. And that's what I was treated for. And so the ADHD went undetected, and essentially for my whole life, it was putting a sticking plaster over the problem of treating the symptoms of the anxiety and the depression without addressing the fact that I am neurodiverse and my brain works in a different way. And so the narrative I think I carried with me was, I would go to therapy and I would do these personal development courses, and I would see people around me really taking it on and flying and it really working for them, and then it working for a while for me, but then going back to where I was and living my life in these cycles, and I genuinely thought I was broken. I genuinely thought I was broken, a broken person. But then to get a diagnosis, to have so many of my friends that were like my kindred spirits also get diagnoses because we understood each other, it was oh, that's right. And so having that ability to be able to reflect on the fact that, there's nothing wrong with me, I don't have an illness, I don't have a mental illness, all of that was symptoms of trying to make myself function in a world that didn't work for me. So my journey really, and if it weren't for the pandemic, I don't think I'd have got here. I'd have still been living in these cycles. But to now come to a place where I can, say with confidence, I can't do that, that's not going to work for me, or I can't do it that way, it's not going to work for me, is so incredibly empowering. A lot of people have said to me, why would you want to put yourself in a box? Why would you want to label yourself? And I'm like, well, it's not my identity. The label is not my identity. What the label gives me is a framework to have conversations that allow me to navigate the world in a way that works better for me and makes me happier. So that's kind of where I'm at the moment.
It's amazing. I guess even did you sort of look back, as well, when from being a child, I posted some yesterday just about how obviously children learn and stuff at school, and sort of identifying those sort of things. Do you look back then and it sort of makes a bit more sense now, I guess?
Oh yeah, completely. I mean, at school I was sort of a straight A student. You know, but I would learn everything so quickly. I would then get bored. And you know, when I spoke to my psychiatrist during my diagnosis, weirdly, my mum had kept all my old school reports. She gave them to me, so I was able to just hand them over to my son. It was like, Alice is very, very bright, but gets very easily distracted, gets very, very upset, gets very frustrated easily, you know, loses interest, won't do things if she doesn't understand why. And all of those things are so, you know, so common with ADHD, you know, the impact of being told I was too emotional, or I was too much, my whole life, when emotional dysregulation is a huge symptom of ADHD, you know, was just sort of again left me thinking like, well, I'm just this annoying person that's too much for people.
But yeah, I mean, talk to me a little bit about, I'd be interested about how it's sort of affected and impacted like your mindset about sort of the business and where you are right now, like with the business, with Sophie, the business partners. Yeah, talk to me a bit about that.
Yeah. Well, through my whole career, I sort of never stayed in a job longer than 2 years because I would just be like, oh, everything's sort of okay now. The challenge isn't there, and it's time to move on. And then I started my own business because it had reached a point. This was 6 years ago now, where I was so miserable at work because I just couldn't make myself function within the framework I was being asked to function in. I didn't have the vocabulary to be that self-aware at the time. I was just like, I hate this place, I hate this job, I hate everyone, this is shit, and I'm leaving. And now I'm like, oh, I get where that was now. But I think, you know, particularly like you showed in the clip, the pandemic was really, really difficult because Sophie, my business partner, when we met, we both lived in Brighton. During the pandemic, she moved up north, so we were geographically separated from each other. She wasn't seeing me every day, and she didn't see this kind of gradual unraveling of my mental health. And then she came down to see me for a week and was just like, almost like, I don't even know who you are. Like, I couldn't hide from her. And it culminated in her basically saying to me, like, you need to step away, you need to take some time away, which at the time was so difficult, but amazing that she allowed me that time, and I just took a month off work and just like I said, just stopped, because I had reached a point where I physically couldn't go forward. And then shortly after that, about 6 months after that, I was quite lucky in that my diagnosis got fast-tracked because of the state I was in. I got my ADHD diagnosis, and then that has allowed us to really look at, oh, okay, so that's why this part of the business wasn't working, because I'm telling you that you need to do this and you physically can't. And I could say to her, the reason that this isn't working and you keep getting frustrated is because I need you to communicate this to me in a different way, or I need to use a different system to be able to do this, or it doesn't work for me when you do this. And to have that framework of just knowing how my brain is going to process, retain information, has meant that our communication has vastly improved, our relationship is stronger than ever. But again, without the diagnosis and without just taking that time, we could have so easily just, you know, had a really acrimonious split and just gone, you know what, this isn't working, but we didn't. We worked through it because of our commitment to each other, and I am so grateful for that.
Do you feel that that's like that clarity has been a bit of a relief, I guess, that clarity been relief, and the communication you sort of mentioned as well, like, I'm assuming is that not just with Sophie, but the rest of the team and clients as well? Or?
Yeah, absolutely. To be able to, I mean, it's improved my relationship with clients, because, you know, we you know, the way we operate at The Joyful is we bring our whole selves into work, we bring our whole selves into the space. We don't put on a face for clients, we are honest with clients about what is going on. So like, all my clients know that I have a neurodiverse diagnosis. All of my clients know how I need to process information. You I preface conversations with it, and we are able to have conversations, and 9 times out of 10 they'll be like, oh, yeah, one of my friends also has it, or my son has it, or my daughter has ADHD, or or autism, or a neurodiversity, and they get it. But if you're not honest, that can so easily unravel, and it has in the past, where client relationships have really struggled because a client would have been communicating with me in a way and expecting me to do things and act in a certain way, and I couldn't, and because I didn't have the vocabulary that I have now and the awareness that I have now to be able to say, it doesn't work for me for you to, for example, give me instruction verbally, like you have to email me, or my memory isn't that great, so please can I record this conversation so that I don't miss anything, is incredible, because it has helped me function. And it's like things as simple, simple like that, to be able to stop and say, I'm not actually taking in anything you're saying, please can you email me instead, is empowering, actually.
I can imagine. Mate, look, thank you so much for sharing your story. Just tell us, look, we're going to come towards wrapping up. Just tell us, what does the future hold for you and the Joyful?
Oh, who knows? I feel like at the moment that everything's changing so quickly for everyone. But I think that we are definitely moving into a space where we are becoming a lot bolder and clearer on what our purpose is as a business. So we've always wanted to work, with the good guys, with purpose-driven, with mission-driven businesses, and I think we really want to go a lot more boldly with that, and really find ways to particularly support marginalised business owners as well. So business owners with neurodiversity, women in business, people from low-income backgrounds that don't have the funds to be able to start their own companies, and look at ways we can do that. And hopefully next year as well, we're launching a leadership community platform called Joyful Leaders, which will provide group support around business development, around business coaching, working with partners and experts, so that we can really harness the power of small businesses, because 96% of businesses in the UK employ fewer than 9 people. Like collectively, SMEs, micro businesses and solopreneurs have so much power, but we have to come together and we have to work together. And I think so much of that has come from a real anger, really, over the last 2 years of how small businesses have been neglected and overlooked, and how much we've struggled, and how many businesses we've seen shut down or have to pivot or have to radically change the way they operate just to be able to survive, because we don't have the support we need and we're not being prioritised. And so everything we do is around bringing these businesses together who do really care about community, they really care about sustainability, they really care about making a social impact, they care about their people, their small teams, they care about collaboration. Like, we really want to be looking at how businesses like that can work together and band together and have a much louder voice and be able to say, yeah, this is what we need, and support each other and lift each other up. So that's what we're going to be focusing on for 2023.
It's amazing. It's music to my ear. I listen to things like that and resonates so much with me. We're about County Business Clubs and collaboration. I think that's come out of the pandemic very much. People are more open-minded to that, to look at it and go, let's come together. Look at all of us in this room. We're all small business owners that, and working together and collaborating and over competition and going out, and we will survive and thrive, I think, by doing that. So. Always. Well, listen, it's been amazing chatting to you again. I'm so grateful for you coming on. I think that neurodiversity, stigmas attached to neurodiversity, stigmas attached to mental health, and I think people like yourself who are brave enough to come and speak openly about it and so honestly with people is truly inspiring. So I'm really grateful for your time, and thanks for coming on. Amazing.
Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions, please? A few questions.
Thank you. Hi, what a fantastic story. So I just wanted to ask you, because you are fully embracing the diagnosis you've been given. I'm a practitioner practitioner, I work with people who walk into my clinic suffering with the symptoms you're describing. And actually for them mentally it can be very, very difficult for them to embrace what you've been told. Why are you taking on a label? But for you that's reassuring, we know that's reassuring. What advice would you give to someone who's actually really adverse to taking in that they may actually have that going on? What would you say to them?
I would say seek out communities, because that's been the biggest thing for me. So I'm in, for example, a Facebook group, UK Women with ADHD, where there are so many people who can step in and share stuff like that and have support and reassurance. And you know, for me it has been, the exploration of my own diagnosis has been through conversation with those communities online, where people will come in and they will raise fears and they will say things like, and then just be absolutely flooded by comments of like, well, this is why I think it's a good thing, this is why I think it's my superpower, you know, this is why, this is how you can be using that label. Because I think as well, I'm quite lucky in that I came to my diagnosis because at least 3 of my close friends were diagnosed with ADHD and all messaged me and were like, I think this might be what's going on for you. So I came to that already with a community around me, and I think a lot of the engagement I see in groups are from people where they don't necessarily have friends who are neurodiverse, or they've inherited a stigma from things their parents would say. Like a lot of kids my age who grew up in the 80s and 90s had parents that were, you know, staunchly against, like, you are not diagnosing my child with that, you are not, my child is fine, they're not broken, they're not wrong, they don't have, you know, they're not autistic, they don't have ADHD, and they've carried that stigma through with them their entire life. So I think seek out community, like seek out people who have embraced it, seek out people that are further along the journey than you, and talk to them about how it impacts their lives and how they've navigated it.
Thank you.
Thank you, that was amazing. I see passion and relief when I see you sitting there. I have got a friend who believes that she might be ADHD. What was your first step on your journey to be brave and ask for help?
So my first step, and I believe this is different now because this was a couple of years ago for me, so it has, the waiting lists now are much, much longer. And the NHS, I believe, has revised how they work, but I went through an NHS pathway called Right to Choose. If your friend goes on Facebook and just Google's Right to Choose UK, like ADHD, autism diagnosis, there is a Facebook group that explains how to go through the process. And I went through it with Psychiatry UK, who are a company, and if you go to their website and go through Right to Choose, they have instructions there. But essentially, I had already gone to my GP and said, like, I cannot cope, and had a conversation, and they weren't very understanding at first, and I really had to find it within me to keep fighting. And I think by the 3rd conversation, I was able to take a template of a letter that I downloaded from the Psychiatry UK website that listed why I felt I might have ADHD and requested that I'd be put through this Right to Choose pathway, which allowed me to choose the provider. And then once I got into that system, I think I waited about 6 months to get an appointment. I believe the waiting list is about 2 years now because of the level of awareness, but 3 years in Sussex, which is still shorter than I think the 5 to 7 years, which is the NHS route, which is absolutely outrageous. But that help with diagnosis group on Facebook, I would highly, highly recommend. If you just Google Right to Choose, go on the Psychiatry UK website, there's lots of information there, and they've been brilliant with me. And I've just got to the end of my drug titration review, so I'm on medication for it now, which helps massively. But that process took nearly a year for me to get my medication stabilised. So.
One more question, we've got time. This is it. Got me trained.
Thank you, Alex. It's been great listening to you. I'm dyslexic, and I've always struggled telling my clients that I'm dyslexic, and I probably should tell them because I hate getting long emails. I struggle to read them. I struggle to take it in. Where I would be much better off saying, "Pick up the phone to me," or book in a Zoom call. How is it that you've shared the message with your clients that you have ADHD, and how have you sort of spread the message and put it in a way that's positive?
That's a really good question. So we, because of the way we work, we have such a close relationship with our clients anyway, that as soon as I got the diagnosis, I told them. None of them were particularly surprised. But what I now do is, so I, for example, I'm the same. I switch off, I get a long email, I'm like, yeah, but I send really long emails because I over-explain myself because I have ADHD, so that's one of the beautiful contradictions. But I would say put it in your email signature. Like, so every time that you email someone, it just says, you know, my preferred communication method is by phone. So here's my mobile number, or I use Calendly. So I say, or here's a link to my Calendly for you to book in a 15-minute call into my diary. And then that's how I don't get overwhelmed, because I use Calendly to set times each week I'm available for meetings, and I don't allow people to book outside of those times because it's really important for me to be able to manage my energy and plan my week. So something like that could work really well for you as well. And then also just think that says that I'm dyslexic, so this email might contain typos. You know, if you don't have the Grammarly plugin already, it's a lifesaver as well. But yeah, I would say put it in your email signature. And if you have a team as well, if you work with a team, we've asked all of our team what their preferred communication style is. So we have a record for all of our team that they are able to tell us how they prefer to receive feedback, whether they want it written or verbal, what preparation they need before we have a call or a meeting, the times they're available for meetings, so that we as a team can adapt our communication styles to each other. So like there's a team member where she wants feedback on a video call because she reads too much into like verbal instructions. So we get on a call and we have a little like feedback. But then another one just wants the verbal instructions so they can go and process it in their own time and not be on a call with. So you know, all stuff like that. I think don't be afraid to ask for what you need, because at the end of the day, that's going to allow you to do better work for your clients, because you're going to have more energy, you're going to get the information in a format that works for you, and that's only ever going to be a benefit to them, and it shows your commitment to, you know, doing what you do better as well.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your questions, Alice. Thank you so much for coming on. It's been amazing, inspiring to chat to you as always, and thank you for sharing your story. Round of applause, please. Thank you. Truly inspiring. I think you'll all agree what a brilliant story, and thank you for sharing that. It's amazing. Do we have any other businesses in